Welcome to the Legendary Upside podcast. My name is Pat Rain. Find all of my content at legendaryupside.com. With me today, Daniel Racz, Sackreligious, and Kyle Dvorchak. We're going to be talking through the Legendary Upside best ball rankings because, fellas, training camp is underway. How you enjoying the first days of the real heart of best ball season?
Feels good. Already getting the reports that Kendre Miller might as well be the 7th string running back in New Orleans. So nothing more fun.
It's always bad when you get that and you're like, yeah, I knew it. I knew it was a terrible pick all along, but we just kind of had to do it.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire rug pull too. You see Kadarius Toney, you're like, oh, I buy that. Clyde's terrible. Why would they ever put him in as their 2nd string back?
The CEH rug pull is not fun. Luckily, I kind of always had that rug pull in the back of my head as a possibility, but I am at 10% CEH, and it just feels awful.
I think part of the CEH stuff is just systemically how we want to play it. Leone had mentioned this on Twitter a little bit. He was in the Deneric Prince victory lap stuff that has already been going on. But the reason that we were taking CEH is it looked pretty they were pretty decent odds. He had a good moat between him and the third guy. There wasn't really too much competition, it sounded like, and all the other running backs going around there are super ambiguous to if they're going to even produce or even be the third guy on the depth chart. And so we lean into the guys with higher certainty earlier in the offseason, and ideally we're just not taking very many running backs down there in that range. And then as we get more news through training camp, then targets emerge, and that's, I think it's philosophically the correct way to play that.
Well, the other thing, and I think it's kind of a good jumping off point, because I don't know that the CEH bags are dead. They don't know who the RB3 is. They're basically is it Toney? How much can we trust Prince? And it might be the case that after the end of the preseason, we're CEH is actually clearly the number 2. And this is an experiment to see, do we have the RB3 on the roster? That could be what this is. It's the 2 days of Deneric Prince going in as the second back. That's what it could mean. They just want to see him more. It could also mean that he's the RB2 and CEH is a completely wasted pick. So the way I'm basically playing this now is I'm not taking any more CEH. I'm not taking Prince yet, but he's in the rankings now. And if you want to take Prince, that seems fine. But I think I take it we're kind of back to the waiting. It's ambiguous now. Yeah.
It was a week ago. CH looked like a 15th round pick that you could get in the 18th round. That's great. We need some of those guys. And then, oh no, it turns out he's an 18th round pick. He's not, like you said, he's not dead.
He's a 20th round pick.
Yeah, it probably is a 20th round pick.
Yeah, he's a 20th round pick.
We're going to look back and there will be a lot of 20th round picks. And now he just once again looks like who we thought he was, which is not dead, but just as bad as CEH always was. And there are other players now that we should start trying to fire our bullets on. We went through this process with Braylon Allen, except he went from we don't know to now we know. We will go through this process with so many players, some of whom we will learn information that immediately makes us feel good. Some of it we'll learn immediately makes us feel bad. And then some of them, like CEH, will just kind of return to ambiguity.
It is a reminder that talent still matters down at the bottom. If you're not good enough to hold off Deneric Prince, then, maybe we shouldn't really ever get that excited about you. So I think we got a little bit too overexcited about CH because he's not good, and being good provides a moat. You don't have a moat if you're not good. You just don't. That's not the way football works. So, my 10% CH is going to be, I wish, would I trade that out for 2%? Absolutely. At the same time, by the end of the entire draft period, it'll probably be 4 or 5%. So I think I'm okay with having that level of exposure to CEH because maybe it's the RB2. Any other? So I guess Javonte Williams would be another guy news-wise that we've had a real roller coaster on. We haven't done a rankings pod since he's competing with Samaje Perine for one roster spot. Ben Gretsch had the best reaction to that, which is that CeeDee Lamb is competing with the Cowboys wide receiver 6 for one roster spot.
I feel correct me if I'm wrong, but the Javonte FUD piece came out less than 96 hours ago. That was over this weekend, too. So
I think that's right. Yeah, that's right.
a very short-lived emotion of speculation, unsubstantiated speculation of, Javonte might not make the roster, to then, the guy that was their starter last year and then really bring in any competition, still their likely 1A.
If anyone wants to put out a Jalen Warren hit piece, by the way, you'll be handsomely compensated if you could do the same.
Not by me. I don't want to hear that shit. Don't you dare. Sacko got you though. Sacko will open up the coffers. Javonte, I think we're actually higher on him than we were before the original FUD came out, because it feels like we kind of went through I guess we're at 109 and he's at an ADP of 117. So we're pretty well ahead of the market, but I'm guessing the market kind of recovers and comes sort of closer to this ultimately. But if the market moves up, we're gonna move up as well. I think Javonte, like if the market gets back in on him, taking him ahead of Singletary makes sense, and that's how we'll end up having it ranked. I think we have him right ahead of Singletary without the ADP weighted at all. So if he continues to move up, which I think if he starts to move up, which I think he will now, we'll be right there up into the early 100s. But Estime, we have Estime a little bit higher now. He's just kind of even with ADP, but I wasn't like super into him, and I'm definitely more open to taking him on some of this news that he is likely to make the roster. It really does look like Pirine, who would be cut. Estime, kind of by all accounts, seems like very safe bet to make the roster, which isn't always the case for a day 3 pick. These guys go to the practice squad sometimes. He's probably the RB3, but the RB2 is not a traditional guy in Ja'Lynn McLaughlin, so he has more kind of handcuff potential than some other RB3s. So Estime probably, maybe he drops a little if Javonte rises, but ultimately I do feel better about Estime than I did like a week or two ago. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's a good pick now. I know Jacob Sanderson thinks he should probably be a top 100 pick, but he's a fine player to mix in. You could justify going maybe a round ahead of ADP if there's some correlation element, or you're really pressed for needing some late season upside, but I wouldn't make it anything more than that at this point.
Let's talk Ja'Lynn Polk, who we are pretty big fans of. Guys, huge news. On a team with 0 wide receivers, their second round pick is running with the ones. This changes everything? Take him in the 7th round. How do you guys feel?
I mean, how could we have seen this coming? For a while, I have been saying that, if you just look at the draft capital and also combine that with what we think is going to be the opportunity available there, and this doesn't even bake into the fact that we also think Drake May is probably pretty good. Like Ja'Lynn Polk was probably 5 rounds mispriced. Like if you look at the other receivers that got similar draft capital, yes, he was going close to Leggett, who got similar draft capital to him, but I think Leggett was a little bit scarier as a prospect and also landed in a place where, we already saw the offense look a little dicey last year. But I felt pretty good
and
about
much tougher target competition, and they're talking about running the offense through Deontay. So one of the ways that he hits is much harder, of just like they don't have anyone else to go to, and he earns a ton of targets. That's much harder for Leggett to do.
Yeah, but Polk was just mispriced because the market thought Patriots gross. Patriots will never score. The Patriots are going to project for 1.0 total touchdowns on the season. And so if Ja'Lynn Polk catches the sole touchdown the Patriots score all year, he's still not going to score that many fantasy points. And that's why I really like attacking the offenses that are really, really underpriced, in the market. I think that's systematically one of the best things you can do as far as positioning yourself to win a best ball tournament.
Yeah, I think, and Daniel had a great piece on that exact idea of attacking these underpriced offenses. But Polk, of all the ways to do it, does really feel like the best way. Now it comes down to a specific player delivering on these hopes, and so that's going to have a lot of variance. But just like the setup for him is really good, and of all of these offenses, I want to play it through the Patriots, the most of them. But the Broncos are also a really strong way to play this. We talked about Javonte. I think we've gotten a little higher on Jaleel as well. We're still pretty, we're pretty high on Jaleel. We're pretty in on Franklin, not like super high, but decently high. So Mims, let's see, Marvin Mims, we're just ahead of ADP on, and then Bo Nix, we are significantly ahead of ADP on. So it isn't just the Patriots that we're super psyched about. I think the Broncos side of this is also pretty interesting. It does seem like we haven't gotten like a ton of news on the Broncos in terms of like the Bo Nix part of it, but it seems like he's remains on track for early season.
Yeah, I think week 1's far more likely than not, and just if the offense is priced super low, there's not much lower they can go in reality across the season. A lot of upside, especially rookie quarterback, tons of youth on offense. Sean Payton's fielded competent offenses, especially ones that are like laden with fantasy points to their running back position. And I hope our ranks specifically at running back are conveying that we're not necessarily trying to only pick one winner. We're saying a winner lies in this cohort,
right.
And we want to be overweight this cohort.
Right, and we got a question about the Saints stuff, and we'll get to them in a second. But that's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do there. I do before we leave the Broncos, I just want to mention Dulcich. Gotten a little hype, had a really strong first day of camp. We're not like fully in, but I think if you're looking for a tight end and you've kind of gotten boxed out, we were taking some Jelani Woods there. Sack uncovered a horrific quote from Greg Ballard where he mentioned every single tight end and then was like, also Jelani Woods exists. So we're lower on him now, but I would say don't get here where you need one of these guys. But if you're doing
I was
Bo
going to
Nix
say
stuff,
the way we have these guys ranked is 100%. You shouldn't see this part of the rank.
You shouldn't see this.
Go.
Yeah.
But we do have some advice for you if you make it here. You should really not be banking on a single point from Colby Parkinson or Dawson Knox this year. But DraftKings goes 20 rounds, like other formats go deep. And also there are teams that like you just don't like. You cannot play every room perfectly in terms of how people draft their tight ends. You'll need to get here at some point. And at this point, like Dulcich seems viable. Again, he's one pick ahead of his 215 ADP or whatever. Like viable is all you can say about him. But it is important to know who the actual, like, literally viable tight ends here are. And we see this quote about a guy like Jelani Woods, and he moves to probably not even a viable pick.
Yeah. And speaking of picks we don't think are particularly viable right now, Kendre Miller does feel extremely risky. Where, like, I don't, like, what kind of role are you getting? Like, it is pretty similar to the J.K. Dobbins bet, although Dobbins has a higher seat. Like, if it all comes together for Dobbins, and I have been very skeptical of him coming off the 2 years off the knee injury, off the Achilles, but he's moving well in camp, and they seem to have a role in place for him the entire way. So like, maybe it works out, but like Kendre, I'm like, man, I don't know. It's starting to feel bearish with the comments coming out of Saints camp to start.
Yeah. So for anyone that missed
Dennis Allen, it was Dennis Allen saying simply he needs to figure out how to stay healthy because he left camp, as in Wednesday, he left with a hamstring issue. But then he goes on to say it's hard to make the team when you're in the training room all the time. Like I think he's speaking a bit in hyperbole about him literally being on the 53-man roster, but like. I'm not even sure he's speaking in hyperbole. Like, he flamed out as a rookie and was so, like, produced so little that he falls into a bucket of players in terms of day 2 picks who do, like, as little as he did. that really it's hard to come back from. There are not no successes from guys who see the ball as little as rookies, but there are few of them. And then your coach says it's hard to make the roster when you're not out there, when you're always in the training room. Like, these are as, bright red lights as you will possibly get. Like, it's probably the more likely outcome that we look back and say he was Trey Sermon. Like,
I was about to bring up the
some
Sermon
running
comment.
backs get drafted highly and are not NFL caliber players.
Tyrion Davis-Price.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe Williams.
Isaac Garendo.
Kyle Shanahan's just listening to this with the I think you should leave. What the hell with this? But yeah, on the Dobbins versus Miller, Greg Roman had experience with J.K. Dobbins in Baltimore and then specifically sought him out. I think if Dennis Allen ever gets another coaching staff in any capacity, the last person he is going to bring along is Kendre Miller.
Jamal Williams is going to get a call, though.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if Sean Payton just looks through the Spotrac free agency, sees that Kendre Miller at one point was a New Orleans Saint, maybe that's the path for like Dennis Allen and Kendre to reunite. But it would be a pure like step nepotism type situation.
Yeah. And the other thing with Kendre Miller, and I think like CH, Kendre Miller are similar in certain ways in that like it's always been a very risky bet for somewhat different reasons. For CH, we have a lot of evidence that he's not very good. For Kendre Miller, we don't have much confidence that he's very good because we just haven't really seen it. But the concern is like, is this guy even that good? So as soon as like the news starts to move against him, then I'm willing to be pretty aggressive. In addition, with Kendre, I also worry about like what the ceiling is because Kamara is still there. He's going to soak up a lot of touches. I guess it's a contingent value play, but like this team isn't very good. Their offensive line is also terrible. Brandon Thorne has them 25th overall, and PFF has them dead last. So there's just like this range of outcomes for Kendre that's starting to really look tilted to the downside at his ADP. And frankly, I feel the same way about Kamara. And we had a question about Kamara in Discord, like if we're really cooling on Kendre, and this question came before they realized how cool we were about to get. But if we're cooling on Kendre and the market's cooling on Kendre, why is it that we're behind on Kamara as well? But like, I mean, first of all, theoretically, like we're in a market-based game. So if you just think about like if Kamara was the 101 and Kendre was the 102, like they'd both be horrible picks. Right? The market can price everyone incorrectly on the offense. It's not like someone has to be priced well. But in addition, like I think there are like as we think through, is this player a good bet at cost? Some of this just comes down to like the Saints look like a pretty risky place to bet on running backs. Kamara makes some sense. It's just a bet on pure touches, just like he was last year. He just gets there on volume. It's gross, but it's totally fine. And I think that's fine if like some of the more high upside guys are off the board, but I'm not taking him ahead of Jonathan Brooks. I'm betting. I feel like I'm betting on a potential breakout in Jonathan Brooks that could be a real difference maker down the stretch. Kamara could get there in volume. It's not impossible, but it's a type of profile. It's a type of range of outcomes given how shaky things look in New Orleans overall that you're going to be able to project him for a good amount of volume. But as we look at like how you win these tournaments with late season production, I still don't think Kamara is that well priced, even if we're starting to lose faith that Kendre is going to be anything.
And I think you mentioned this on, I don't know if it was ship chasing, but it was like, not every all 32 tight end rooms are going to have a guy you want. Sometimes some tight end rooms are going to suck. And like, that's probably a little less true with backfields, but factoring in prices of players involved, some backfields we're going to look back and say like, I didn't have fun drafting anyone. I mean, Seahawks were kind of this way last year. Like, oh, we got our Charbonnet 2 or 3 starts or whatever it was. He played pretty poorly in those starts, and you did not win, even though that contingent upside hit, like the contingency activated. It didn't matter because in those games, at least, I still think he might be okay, but in those games, he wasn't particularly good. I think that's kind of the projection here is like, okay, starter's overpriced. We don't like it. But I don't have any faith that, one, we know who the backup is at this point, but two, that if he comes in, does his team actually give him the workload? Is he actually good? Even at the Kendre price, which isn't super expensive, you're asking a lot. Like, if I had the ability to take the field in this backfield at a 20th round pick, hell, maybe I'd do that, but it's just not an option.
We've been we talked about really the Saints holistically too on our rankings call today, and I mean it even led to us moving Olave down a couple spots, and we've been bullish on Olave the whole way. You know, we're not burying him by any means, but you know we've come in overweight on him so far. But I think you know we're less than one pick behind ADP, so. But it just feels monumental to me because I really like Chris Olave, the talent, you know, the player. I think he's really good. I think he's one of the best receivers in the league. And so it feels bad to move him down. But at the same time, the Saints could be like entirely dysfunctional. And the O-line concerns are really the thing that sells me on it. And then when you mix in the bad vibes from Dennis Allen, he really seems like a coach that his players do not like. And I think he's live to be the first coach fired this season. So I see it as the Saints start looking pretty risky to me. And I don't really want to put a ton of eggs in that basket, and certainly not at the running back position behind, you know, what is potentially the worst offensive line in the league. So I think the correct answer here is likely none of the above on the running backs. And the other thing is too, like, so let's just say Alvin Kamara hits a pretty good outcome, hits his 80th percentile outcome. That probably looks a lot like what happened last season, where he's getting 13 targets in a game, you know, rushing about as well as I would rush on an NFL field. But like he's catching a bunch of passes for 0.08 dot and just a full PPR scam guy and gets a ton of work. But it's like, I like all the running backs here. I want a lot of Jalen Warren. I want a lot of James Conner. I want a lot of Zamir White. I want a lot of Jonathan Brooks. Like, I want Jake Ferguson. I don't want to be underweight Aaron Jones. I even want to be overweight Najee Harris. But like, you can't get overweight all these guys unless you're fading someone. And out of all those guys I just listed, like, if you are earnestly evaluating all of those players in this range and you tell yourself, yeah, no, I think Alvin Kamara is just as good a bet as all these guys, like, I think you're missing the picture, because to me, he very clearly feels like if he beats me, I'm not getting buried by him. And I think the odds are he's very unlikely to beat me.
Yeah, I would say the opportunity cost at the running back position is, like, when you said the most likely outcome on the Saints backfield is none of the above, I actually disagree. I think the most likely outcome is Alvin Kamara. That we end up looking like, yep, Kamara was a pretty good pick again. That's the most likely outcome. But when it's not Kamara, it's because he's like done. It's over. Like they're gonna try to make it Kamara. So if it's not Kamara, like he's a mega bust, or he got hurt, you know. So that's you know, it's a big downside that you're taking on, and for what? And I really struggle to see, like, sure, PPR scam wise he could get there, and everyone can score touchdowns in the right weeks, but you're not getting that much upside given the offensive situation and given where he's at in his career. Like, he's really fallen off from what he was. And then, okay, but are there other guys with exciting upside in this range? I mean, this is, you know, in the 70s, and it's like, yeah, there's actually a lot of exciting running backs with really fun upside scenarios that are like flashing awesome efficiency. In the case of Jalen Warren, if you want like an older veteran, Connor's coming off the best year of his career, you know, and an offense that's ascending a little bit. You know, Zamir White, I don't know, but he was actually pretty efficient last year. And I mean, like, it's possible he's pretty good. He was very athletic and he was efficient in the small sample he got. It's like kind of total mystery box, but like I'm intrigued. Jonathan Brooks, pretty good prospect, second round draft capital. You know, you've got offensive concerns there, but like as far as like an ascending talent, Brooks Brooks could be like one of these guys that we're drafting in the high, the very high rounds next year. So to me, it's the opportunity cost at running back. Like, it's not that Kamara can't pay off the ADP. I think he absolutely can pay off the ADP. Maybe he should be favored to pay off his ADP because the ADP is pretty low. But even if he does, did I give up a chance to take the right answer in this pocket of running backs? And finding the true right answer in this pocket feels like one of the easiest ways to finish very highly in these tournaments this year.
Yeah, especially when most of these running backs are generally 7-8 turn picks. Obviously, ADP can move in the whole summer-long tournaments, but those teams are generally loaded up with similar wide receivers early. So if some of those wide receiver combos, Marvin Harrison and Puka, let's say that's the two you need, you have the right 3-4 turn, one of the perfect 5-6 wide receivers, and your RB1 or 2, and possibly 2 of your top 3 running backs come from the 7-8 turn, you probably want the ones that truly smashed or playoff hammers. And I think Kamara is the least likely. Again, we want to speak in probabilities. Any of these guys can be the optimal player either in 1 week or the 3 weeks of the playoff, but I think Kamara is clearly the least likely to do that.
You know what I'd be more interested in Kamara is if we went down here and Devin Singletary wasn't available, or Tony Pollard wasn't available, or Brian Robinson wasn't available, or Javonte Williams wasn't available. Volume, right? And we've talked about this before, but I don't it's weird because Kamara, this level of volume is about as cheap as it's ever been, but I still am I don't want to pay for volume. There's upside available. When there's upside available, why am I paying for volume if volume is also available later? And we've never been in a position where you can go in the 7th, 8th round, I can get volume later. That's never been part of the landscape. And it's possible that it's not part of the landscape in a month, but it is right now. And so I'm just I'll tack on Singletary. I'll tack on Robinson. I draft a lot of Robinson. I draft a decent amount of Singletary. I draft a lot of Javonte. I draft Zeke. I draft some Gus Edwards. If I'm just paying for touches, I can do it more cheaply. Not as many touches as you're getting with Kamara. I'll give you that. And a lot of them are carries instead of receptions. But it does feel weird to say because it's pretty cheap, but I still think it's a little early to just pay for empty calorie touches, which is kind of where we're starting to feel like Kamara is. Anyone else in this range we should cover?
I think James Conner we want to mention.
Oh, that's a good one.
Early on, maybe a month ago after the Coach Speak Index, great Twitter follow if anyone's not, just best person analyzing coach rosters. Clear buzz that James Conner was not just the 1A, but the one. He was the starter in Arizona. Trey Benson's the backup, has contingent value as a young rookie, but Conner was going closer to the 8-9 turn.
Also, I don't know that he is the backup. I think it was on the Roto-World football show. I think it was Darren Urban said that he thinks Michael Carter might be the traditional 2. And that Benson would be a contingent handcuffy type dude, kind of like we talked about with Estime. They might be Carter's Jaleel and Benson's Estime.
Yeah, if someone's playing 20% of the snaps in week 1, it's Michael Carter out there doing some pass blocking, running a few routes. But if that rolls 20 or 30%, maybe you pop up for a 3-catch and a touchdown kind of game. That role still means something. We'd like our contingent guy to be a contingent guy who can maybe pop up for 2 to 3 usable weeks, even if he never actually makes good on the contingency. And you're right, that was actually a good call. It was Darren Urban saying that it's at least he definitely didn't lock in Benson to be that guy. I think he specifically said, as of right now,
it's early. It's early. It could be that guy.
It was literally before training camp started, but that's not what we want to be hearing. We know that is not the case with Blake Corum right ahead of Trey Benson. If those are just the exact same bet, except we think, Blake Corum could get in more, or he is obviously more contingent value in that if Kyron goes down, Corum literally, if Kyron goes down today, Corum should just be drafted where Kyron is. Don't know that we can say that with Benson, and Benson's starter goes so much later. There's a lot of pitfalls to the Benson profile that you just have to get through the summer to start realizing.
Yeah, and with Conner, we feel that the 7-8 turn running backs, a lot of them offer different enticing profiles. And Conner's, I think, depending on your portfolio, I've gotten up to 20% at this point I'd like to get it a little higher as long as he's in that 7-8 turn rotation. But once he starts climbing above that, I'm going to be fine to let him go. So if you're at closer to an even position, which I think is probably where you'd be based on our ranks, I'd encourage people to
Yeah,
really
I'm at 9%, which is I've been drafting out the ranks, so
push the pedal to the metal there in the short term, because I think it's far more likely than not he climbs earlier into the 7th round, possibly into the 6th, and at that point I would be very happy with a packed bag.
Yeah, I mean, if James Conner heads into the 6th round, like, I'm fine waving goodbye. But I think in the meantime, he makes a lot of sense. And I do think he rises. He was a pick on ADP chasing for me a couple weeks ago as a riser. It's just like kind of a classic, hey, he's just the clear lead back. We like clear lead backs. Those go in like the 6th round. And I think there's some reasons that you wouldn't want to take him in the 6th round. But, if you can still get him in the early 80s, I think getting like meaningful overweight, like, wouldn't it be nice to be even with the field on James Conner at the end of draft season, but all of your exposure came before he went in the 70s? And I think he ends up going to the 70s ultimately. All right. Anyone else in this range?
Do we want to do the Keon Coleman?
But yeah, let's do the Keon Coleman. Let's talk Jameson Williams just very, very briefly. We've moved him up a little. We're still semi-skeptical, but the news has been just continually bullish on him. So not a fade for us truly, but we're kind of like, we're probably going to be in this range of just like, yeah, okay. Like the whole up into the 3rd round, we're going to be like, oh, okay.
He's our Calvin Ridley. We're like last year, Calvin Ridley, we were like, I get it. It's not our favorite pick, but I understand why the market to a degree is doing what they're doing. Whether they're being rational, I don't know, but like, I get the excitement building around the profile, even if that's sketchy.
Yeah.
And like the profile, if you squint, is super elite, productive Alabama receiver drafted in the 1st round.
It's a magic puzzle. It's like hard to see, but once you see it, you're like, oh,
it's beautiful. Like,
yeah.
And who knows if it actually is the puzzle pieces are put together this year. But I understand why the market wants to move him up. And at this price range where it's just a complete wasteland of wide receiver anyways, like he's on the outside of like last year's Bateman line. It's probably okay to be like, if you need a receiver here, go ahead, take him. It's fine.
Speaking of the Bateman line, we debated if Keon Coleman is the Bateman. I personally think JSN is the Bateman line, but Coleman, kind of that like straggler who's just behind the Bateman line. If you get boxed out, you can grab him as like your wide receiver 4. I've also grabbed him as my wide receiver 5 to kind of feel like a little bit better heading into the running back sweet spot here. But we talked about him a while. I don't think we actually changed his rank. I think we stayed exactly where he was, but a big discussion point for us on the call. Daniel, what are your thoughts on him?
I was pushing to move him down more from a market-based play of, I think that enough negative buzz of Keon Coleman will be brought along slowly. There was some Mac Hollins buzz for just like being a great hang with the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen just, wanting to spend time with him.
Josh Allen called him one of the all-time greats regarding his personality. He loves Mac Hollins. If it's like Hollins versus Claypool, I think the great hang quality. He's making the roster.
Easy. In points per hang league, yeah, Mac Hollins is elite.
And for the stuff that coaches care about, like points for block where you actually try, Mac Hollins is like at infinity and Chase's at 0. So another feather in Hollins' cap. But Coleman, I just think if enough reports surface that he's brought along slowly, Mac Hollins is there, MVS probably makes the roster, Coleman's unlikely to stay out of the slot early and earn that gig. There are enough reasons for me to think he falls towards the 7-8 turn, maybe a little lower. I know other people here were thinking that the fall on Keon had already happened from the 6-7 turn to the mid-7, but I'd like to end up slightly overweight, but ideally at the 7-8 turn, maybe slightly later with a lot of attachment to Josh Allen, but maybe I'm getting too fancy with it.
Yeah, I think he probably falls to the 8th, but as part of receivers falling in general, and I don't know how far into the 8th he falls, and you're probably just building similar-ish because Josh Allen probably rises into the 3rd, but not that high into the 3rd, so it's like Josh Allen in the 3rd and Keon Coleman in the 8th, as opposed to Josh Allen in the 4th and Keon Coleman in the 7th. I think that's probably where where we settle. Would be my guess. But I also do think Coleman could rise. Coleman could rise a lot if the new, like, there was kind of some negative news, the GM saying like, yeah, I don't know if they teach run blocking at Florida State, but we definitely require it here. I mean, that's pretty concerning. But like, he gets out. What if he gets out on training camp? He's improved his run blocking a lot. He's got a connection with Allen. Like, we start to get that kind of drumbeat. Like, he could rise to like the early 6th round. That he was there. He was there before. So the market is definitely, the market-based stuff is definitely important to keep in mind, but it's a very volatile profile and a high ceiling profile given how wide open the depth chart is. So I'm like right even with the market, right around 8%. We're basically even with the market now. So we're just kind of staying here roughly even with the market for now.
Yeah, with Coleman, I kind of also think he falls, but if there's a rise, it could be meteoric. I mean, like Google, if you're close to listening to this when it comes out, Google Keon Coleman's name right now. Top articles. Allen connects with Keon for toe drag touchdown. Keon makes incredible touchdown catch. Keon and Dalton Kincaid make superstar grabs. That was all about the same touchdown, obviously. That came from Josh Allen. Like, super, like
5
big
articles about 1 touchdown.
Yeah, it's one touchdown. But
what a time of year. All the results are literally just about one touchdown play.
We're frothing at the mouth for this kind of stuff, but so is the median underdog draft.
Yeah.
Frothing at the mouth for something fun to happen so we can draft aggressively off of it. Not first round rookie, but like 33rd overall rookie with a like exciting high ceiling profile is playing with the ones and lighting up training camp. If we're wrong in a way, like if we're wrong about predicting his ADP goes down, we could be wrong drastically, which is why, although I think like better than 50-50 times his ADP drops in the next 2 weeks, if it goes up, I do not want to say, I kind of want 10% Keon, and now I am forced to pay crazy prices for it. I don't want to be that specific on picking his price when I just want to be a bit over the field on him. It's just kind of the profile we should generally bet on, even if the hyper specifics of his college target per route run didn't meet my spreadsheet standards.
Yeah, I'm at 8% Coleman right now, and I think Kyle's right that the median is probably a decrease, but the mean's probably closer to neutral because of the tail outcome of if it increases, it could really increase. And let us not forget, there's tons of like reasons for fans to want to root for this guy. His opening press conferences were electric. He talked about all the imaginary receiving touchdowns he caught in the first minute on the Bills field. So like imagine the hype once he like starts catching multiple real touchdowns. He's caught 3 imaginary his first time on the field. It's like if he catches 3 real ones, we might never hear the end of it.
And just before we move on from Keon Coleman, super brief profile analysis. When I was first looking at Keon Coleman, just doing like all my get up to speed on the rookie stuff before the NFL draft, I initially had pegged him as like kind of similar to Quentin Johnston in that they both were guys that I thought were really volatile. Last year, I was really, really anti Quentin Johnston. And then Pat, convinced me that, hey, this is what you've done is you correctly identified that this is a player with a lot of volatility in their range of outcomes. It's someone who could be really good. It's also someone who could be a huge bust. But the actual way to play that in best ball is not to be like, oh, it's a risky guy, I'm not going to click him. It's eat your vegetables, man. You get to your 8% because like when Keon Coleman is the rookie that we all should have been clicking, like you're going to be really sad if you don't have him. And what you lose, like having, like, would we prefer to not have the guy that we take, in the 80s be a bust? Like, yeah, sure. But it's not going to totally bury you. It's not going to absolutely kill all those teams. And so the stuff that I noticed just in watching both him and QJ play is when I watched QJ play, he's like a guy who his big shtick was that he was really good at yak, but he was really good at getting yak and dominating inferior competition with like literally the same move every time. Like go watch QJ college highlights. It's all body catches. And then there's one little like step, come back and spin move and stiff arm a defender who, is now selling used cars. And it's like so tremendously unimpressive. Like, it's just like, this guy just does one thing against guys that are worse than him. Like, this isn't impressive to me. But watching Keon Coleman is like, and you can see this when you watch some of his special teams plays too. Like, he's good in the open field. Like, when the ball is in Keon Coleman's hands, he looks like a guy where it's like, oh, this guy could be like a problem. Granted, like, a lot of the peripherals were not as great for him, but you know, he did outplay Jaden Reed when they were both at Michigan together. So like, there's enough stuff there for Keon. Michigan State, thank you. There's enough good stuff there for Keon Coleman. Like, you know, has some special teams dynamism, like looks good with the ball in his hands. That to me is like, there's enough that I'm willing to not ignore the warts on the profile, but just say like, this is a high variance player. And he also happens to be attached to, you know, one of the best quarterbacks, you know, in the game, especially for fantasy. And so I don't want to be fully out on this. I think it's too cute to just be like, Keon Coleman's a bust.
Yeah. And we did this last year. Like, you know, we did it and it didn't work. And this was cheaper, right? But, well, first of all, we did it with QJ. We took QJ. I didn't have a ton of QJ, but I had, you know, a decent amount. But I also was taking Addison, you know, and I liked him better. And I thought he was a little safer. Went in a, kind of 7th round range, I believe, maybe 6th. But the kind of the take your medicine guys last year were a little cheaper. It was Jonathan Mingo. We took our medicine with Jonathan Mingo. It was horrible medicine. I wouldn't recommend it. But the other dude was poison. It was poison, actually. Yeah. The other dude was Rashee Rice. You know, and he was cheaper partly because Sky Moore had just busted and really hurt everybody. But Moore was more expensive than Rice even last year. We weren't that excited about Rice's profile. If I just went purely off of the profile, I'd be like, I'm not taking Rashee Rice. Like, this is ridiculous. But the appeal of these rookies in large part is that we don't know if they're good or not, because we know like a lot about the other players and how good they are. And you do find cases where the market kind of egregiously misprices the players based on how good they are likely to be. But a lot of players just like priced well. And the rookies we know, it's just hard to price them well because we actually don't know how good they are. So I just, with a guy like Coleman, he makes me nervous, like really nervous. But, you know, given how wide open the depth chart is, it's like he kind of has to be bad not to be able to get out there and put up something. So I think, I mean, it is kind of a similar type of bet to QJ, but QJ was behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Now, Mike Williams got hurt, and we learned that it wouldn't have mattered if the depth chart was completely empty. He wasn't going to do anything no matter what. But you do have at least a little bit of a better starting point. And ultimately, I think like as bad as it felt, betting on a guy like Quentin Johnston in the 8th round is probably the correct process move.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want anyone to you can fade Keon if you just think this profile is too risky for Heim playing game, but because Quentin Johnston failed is not a reason to fade Keon Coleman. His target competition is weak, probably some of the weakest in the NFL, attached to a top quarterback. And again, being a rookie, the actual skill level there is uncertain. It's across some probability distribution that is unknowable until he steps on the field. So unless you are extremely confident that you know something no one else does, the volatility in rookies should have the prior being that you should be interested in drafting them almost always.
Yeah, I mean, the question is how many Jonathan Mingos and Quentin Johnstons and to a lesser degree JSNs are you willing to sift through until you find your Rashee Rices, Jaden Reeds, and ultimately at the highest level,
Tank Dells, your Puka Nakuas.
Tank Dell, like especially like Tank Dell stays healthy. He is one of the best rookies, like frankly, ever probably outside of we literally got the best rookie ever. How many of those are you willing to sift through of the bad ones? Are you willing to get to Reed, Rice, Nakua, Tank Dell? And the answer when so much of the money is paid out to the top 50, 100 first place, the answer is you should be willing to sift through a ton of them. And sometimes it is going to suck so bad watching Jonathan Mingo do that thing where his feet fly out of bounds and he can't catch one of the only passes ever thrown his way, despite him running all those routes. It will be painful. But like, if you're playing to be safe, there are the standard best ball, like the true like 2015s best ball leagues. Those exist. Go play those. You can make money at those. You can be a winning player at those, and the strategy is vastly different. But like if you show up to Best Ball Mania, you got to know how to play, and you got to inject like high-end variance into your roster. And like Daniel said, it is
especially late season, which rookies, that's the other key thing with rookies, is that they're very likely to be producing at the end of the year.
It's just unknowable how good they are. And we have a pretty good certainty on how good a lot of the players in the pool are. The fact that you can get, I just don't know if Keon Coleman is a superstar and he goes in a range where I know a lot of the guys are probably median better than him, but are definitively not superstars. It's Best Ball Mania. You got to draft not just some of those guys. You want to draft a lot of them.
Yep. Let's go to the Bengals backfield, because this is a bit of a change. We've been taking Zach Moss. Zach Moss was someone that was kind of like not part of like the group of running backs that was really targeting early on. Felt like a little bit of a leak where, Moss was, part of that group. And I got back up to 7% on Moss, and I feel okay about that. But the problem is that the Bengals have started talking about the backfield, and it seems like they're pretty open to the idea of Chase Brown taking that job. Whereas like heading into training camp, seemed like Zach Moss starter, Chase Brown rotational guy. And in the athletic preview of training camp, that's how they had it. Zach Moss is the starter, Chase Brown is the rotational guy. Third down back, TBD, maybe Samaje Perine, if he gets cut, that kind of thing. So that, that's like, all right, Moss is pretty interesting this late on a really good offense. I don't want to be out. I don't want to be overconfident. But to hear the Bengals talking about, they're excited about Chase Brown, kind of seeing if he can shake that kind of starting order up. And then the other thing is that I'm writing up Brian Robinson for an article that I'm doing, and I mentioned the Austin Eckler contract, and I compare it to the Antonio Gibson contract. It's very similar. It's also pretty similar to the Zach Moss contract, which you could argue, so Eckler's going to, be the presumed starter. But like, I do not view it that way in Washington. And very clearly Antonio Gibson is the backup, given that they just then, after signing him, gave Ramondre a new deal and committed to him and talked about that. If Moss ends up being like the backup, like it's very possible they brought in Moss to be like, at worst, he'll be our backup, and hey, he could be our starter, but it allows us to see what we have in Chase Brown, and there's a floor here now. Like that might be what they're doing. And we still have Moss, ahead of Brown. He's not crazy behind ADP. Brown has come up. I've been about even. I think I'm at 10% on Chase Brown. So not super heavy. I think I'm willing to get a little bit more aggressive now. But the problem, and Kyle, I know you were worried about this, like they still could bring in Samaje Perine. So it's tough to in some ways, like it's possible the Bengals backfield is actually one of the ones where we're like, there were no real right answers here if they bring in Perine.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big worry, just because Perine is familiar with the team. He's a good pass catcher and pass blocker. He's a giant dude. Like, he can also handle the physical blows of carries. But, I mean, Sack and I talked about this in Discord. As much as, like, they're almost certainly the most likely destination if he's cut. Out of the 31 remaining teams, you would rank them first, or if you really want to quibble with it, you could maybe say second or third. But that's a plurality out of... Yeah, I think first. I don't know. You really want to throw Dallas there, or the Chiefs. They could maybe really use another, backup quality running back, like a first backup quality running back, frankly. But yeah, let's say they're first, and they're 3 times more likely than any other team, like the average team. Like, that's still not a high likelihood that we've already said contingent on him getting cut.
Right, on him getting cut, which he might not.
It's still not a crazy high likelihood that he would actually end up with the Bengals. So as much as like things that keep me up at night, because I have a lot of Chase Brown, yeah, like that would suck. And it is possible, but you've worked yourself down a pretty narrow part of the tree of realities that I don't think it's worth really baking in a ton of Chase Brown's price. Or if you really want to bake it in, it would be a very small factor.
And that's how we played it here. Brown came up, and I think we're all above. Or Daniel, where are you at on Brown?
Not high
You're
enough.
not. You're not.
Luckily,
Okay.
only 2% Moss, but only 4.5% Chase Brown. So win some, lose some in this hypothetical. If
You had a lot of wins on our call today, so I think you can get. Yeah, you have plenty. You don't have to focus on too much evening out, except this Chase Brown one. And Sack, I think you said you were at 15% Brown.
Yeah, I'm 15% Brown, 5% Moss.
Okay, I'm 10.5% Brown and 7% Moss. So, yeah, I'm going to be working to get that kind of closer to where you have it. I like the 15-5 setup a lot more. All right, we only have like maybe 10 more minutes here. As we move down, we lowered Kamani Vidal a little bit. We're closer to ADP. We're kind of playing that Chargers backfield really through him, but the fact that Dobbins, he's out there, he's running around, he's looking pretty decent, and it seems like he's going to get the first crack at things. We brought Dobbins up a bit, not like a ton, but it does seem like, hey, if you're ever going to take J.K. Dobbins, maybe the next couple of days makes sense to like get a little, and then if he jumps up, at least you have a little, and if it ends up being kind of what we thought before, you only have a little. So get your towel today.
I believe our prior on Dobbins was based on the $50,000 guaranteed, which is extremely little on a contract, and that he would have to earn reps because that contract as a signal is you've earned nothing, you'll get to try out. It seems like the tryout is very early, small sample, but it seems that it's going better than we at least initially thought, enough to now we're saying, now we're removing some of the risk. Not saying he makes the roster, but now it's far more likely than what we estimated prior. So if you want to take Dobbins now, green light, go ahead, try and get close to at the field. I assume I'm at 1% to 2% Dobbins. Wish it was higher.
I'm at 1%. I don't know that I would be getting even with the field, because I would say maybe be even with the field
going
over
forward
the next few days. Yeah. I don't know that I'm going to get even with the field.
I mean,
I've got
some of us aren't thousands of drafts deep, so it might just be like if you're doing a few drafts, you take him, at least make it more of a priority to try and take him, and that'll have a larger effect, because I'm only 100 drafts deep starting from the beginning of June, so less degenerate.
I'm like 650 deep.
Yeah, I'm I think 1,200 deep, so it takes a little while to turn an ocean liner.
I'm excited for one of those like
1-800. When you told Zach to get even with the field on Dobbins, he's like,
I got a lot of work to do.
Quit my job.
I guess the slow puppy is 100% J.K. Dobbins. Then
it's like, I need the underdog. Maybe by the puppy 8, I'll be even.
Yeah, I long for the days of like a 1-800 gambler ad where it's just us reciting. I'm like, I'm only 100 drafts deep, Pat. Fool, I'm at 650. Then Sack goes, just like, don't be like this.
1,200 is impressive. That's on underdog or just overall?
No. I'm a little over 1,000 on underdog, and I have very little volume on DraftKings because I am
what
anxiously
tournaments
awaiting.
did I miss? Are you doing like is that the other formats?
Doing it all.
Okay. I'm really sticking to kind of the Best Ball Mania style stuff right
now.
now.
I mean, just to clarify, when I say doing it all, I have 0 in the sprint, the marathon, weekly winners, or what's the eliminator so far.
Oh, that's what I was asking.
And I very likely will be maxing the eliminator. I'll definitely do some in the sprint. Probably won't do any in the marathon.
Are you counting Superflex?
No.
What
I've got.
Did I miss?
I don't know.
600 drafts of 400 drafts of
how many fast puppies?
Pat, you had a child at one point recently. Didn't you have to take time off?
Pat, we'd hope you'd have missed some tournaments. You surely should have missed at least a few.
I guess I did.
I do my post draft. I am counting some pre draft. I think I'm like 1,100 total on underdog with like 300 pre draft and 800 post draft.
Okay, all right. I mean, that makes more sense because I was like, how did I miss like 400?
I do still have 150 slow puppies to chunk in there though right now.
Yeah. I'm about I think like 100 deep on the slow puppy.
with the limited amount of time we have left, I do really want to talk about some of the quarterbacks that go in the 4th and 5th round, because there's some.
That's a great topic. Let's cover that quickly.
I'm just glad you didn't say Jerry Jeudy. When you said you really had to talk about something, we all thought we knew where it was going.
So with these guys, I have been historically underweight on elite quarterback. Last season when they were going in like the 2nd, 3rd round, I came in underweight on pretty much all of them. This year, I am trying to be at the field or over on almost all of these guys from Mahomes and up. Right now, I'm really struggling on Mahomes. In my recent drafts, I'm at about 4% Mahomes, and I'm doing the thing where I take Mahomes Kelsey at the 3-4 turn when Zay Flowers and Tank Dell are off the board. So when that tier of receiver is done, I will do the Mahomes Kelsey thing, and I will only do it if I've already taken 2 other receivers. But that's helping me increase my Mahomes exposure. I'm also doing the Mahomes leap of faith, where if I get him late enough in the 5th round and all 3 KC receivers are still on the board, I will just take him and pray that at least one of the receivers makes it back to me. But even doing that, I'm only at about 4% Mahomes. So I'm anticipating a rise in all the Chiefs receivers. Maybe Hollywood rises. I don't think Hollywood rises, but who knows? I can't get inside the mind of a Hollywood drafter. But for Rice and for Xavier Worthy, I feel pretty strongly that both those guys are rising, and they will be rising potentially very rapidly. So I think I'm going to start doing Mahomes potentially in the late 4th and just taking one of those guys there. The other one is Lamar.
Well, let's stick on the Mahomes one a little more, because it's difficult to communicate this in the rankings, and it's also difficult like when I look at my drafts, pulling up Mahomes, in my overall drafts, I'm at 3% Mahomes. I'm barely getting any. When I look at my Best Ball Mania, where I'm paying more attention, I'm firing in picks on a lot of these slow drafts. Done a ton of slow drafts this year. I'm firing in picks, using the sidekicks. Like, oh, you suggest this? Great. Let me take the 3rd guy. But I'm like, trying to get him in quick. With Best Ball Mania, a little more thoughtful. And today I did what you suggested, Sack. I took Kelsey in the 3rd, Mahomes in the 4th. I got Rashee Rice in the 5th. Didn't get Worthy in the 6th. Tried to push him with the news that he was, not that he had missed another day of training camp. Didn't work. Ended up being a fun team. But yeah, so I'm at 6.5% Mahomes there on Best Ball Mania, because I'm making a point to think through it more. But like, as you're kind of drafting, you got to make this decision with Mahomes. Are you going to try to take him and pull him up to the early 4th, maybe pull Kelsey into the late 3rd, and build a stack like that? Or you can also pass on Kelsey, see if Kelsey comes to you in the mid 4th, which he does a decent amount, and then hope you can get Mahomes in the mid to late 5th. That doesn't happen a lot. I don't get Mahomes there a lot. What ends up happening more is that I end up taking another Chief wide receiver, and then maybe I get an Anthony Richardson fall in the 6th, or I grab Jaden Daniels and I try to get quarterback upside that way, or I take Drake May at the end. But like, I end up stacking the Chiefs without Mahomes. But I think both are viable. I think you don't want to only bring Mahomes up to the 3-4 turn and kind of force those stacks. You also don't want to just tell the rooms, hey, if you never give me Mahomes at a discount, I just won't have any Mahomes. I think you want to try to build him into your portfolio a little bit. So it's a tricky thing to rank. And we're kind of, it's like literally splitting between like the late 5th and the early 4th. And I think he's a fine pick kind of anywhere in that range.
Yeah, I think at the end, to touch on this, again, I want to take Mahomes in these pairings at the 3-4 turn when I know that there won't be some seismic ADP shift that will remove that uniqueness element. So the fast puppy already filled because all of us sickos have nothing better to do. The slow puppy still going on, unlikely that his ADP moves a ton there. Whereas in Best Ball Mania, for all we know, Mahomes might just become a fixture of the 3-4 turn with Kelsey, and then a large part of the edge is gone. So I would
I would push back on that, because I agree with Sack that I think Worthy comes up And I think Rice has potential to come up. I mean, a lot of potential to come up. So Mahomes, Kelsey, Rice, Mahomes and Kelsey plus one of Rice or Worthy might get a lot more difficult. And that is the way, maybe Hollywood falls or whatever, but that's not my preferred way to play it. So I'm also thinking about, in Best Ball Mania, this texture of team might be a little bit unique because I have the receiver or potentially two receivers tacked on.
It might be more unique in the cost of acquiring the players, but the frequency at which those players pair together might outweigh that. Like, if they are more expensive, but it's just a regular fixture that, someone
your fourth is spent on Mahomes. So if Worthy moves up, and
if
you
it's
can't
like
get him in the fifth
4 or 5 turn Mahomes Worthy, let's say you then want to reach on Kelsey at the 2-3.
Oh, at the 2-3.
But then,
obviously,
combinatorially, you're going to have different first and second round picks, and those players are so, you're opposite side of the board. So it's like, to me, it doesn't matter if you end up with a lot of Mahomes Worthy or Mahomes Rice like becoming a staple of the other side of the board, because I have it on the other side of the board, and I also have it later. So I'm getting some draft capital on you on that. So I don't really care about the uniqueness angle with the Mahomes stuff. I think by and large the uniqueness stuff is mostly overblown. I think people are pretty bad at properly valuing that. Really, I think that's one of the largest leaks that people who think that they're sharp drafters are making. You're doing too much in the name of uniqueness. And it can become pretty abundantly clear if you start to do some of the math on it. So just like if you really sacrifice stuff for uniqueness right now, or you do a lot of stuff for just because you're getting unique, like I would just say like maybe check yourself on how much value you're actually gaining from uniqueness. Uniqueness shouldn't be the thing that's driving a lot of your decisions.
Why do you feel that strongly about it?
Because if you look and you kind of like you can do this by simulating like how a playoff gauntlet works, and what ultimately happens by setting some base rates for, hey, these players are combined at X frequency compared to these players combined at this frequency. Number one, like 3 and 4 player like combinatorial ownership gets to be like pretty small numbers of teams very rapidly, right? You're never going to have a dupe team in Best Ball Mania, like it's just not going to happen. You might have a team that gets duped out of the whole 670,000 team tournament, and even getting like a duped starting lineup is pretty hard. So, I think in the grand scheme of things, like the uniqueness is nice as an added benefit sometimes, but for me, it's more so like you gain so much more because of draft capital, like a player being mispriced and then coming to the correct price, and your team is unique because of that, because you got a player that was going later because they were pricing correctly. Like 95% of the value gained on that team isn't from the fact that it's a combination that's low owned. It's from the fact that you got a player that should have had a $7,000 DraftKings salary, but you got him at $5,000. Like that's the advantage. Not inherently the combinatorial ownership stuff, which it does matter a little bit, but I see so many people doing stuff that I think is close to lighting money on fire in the name of uniqueness. So I want people to be aware of that, so they're not shooting themselves in the foot before they actually like look into what is actually doing the heavy lifting on generating value for their teams.
One of the other stacks to touch on here is Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, and kind of a tricky thing to rank. We flipped Andrews over McBride, which hadn't been the case. We've had McBride over Andrews. And look, like if you're just going to give me one of the tight ends, I probably still take McBride, but I'm trying to like communicate this in the rankings a little bit of like more of like what I'm actually doing. If I show up and it's the 409 and Andrews, McBride, Lamar, Mahomes are still available, I'm taking Andrews. And I'm playing for Lamar to come back. And I mentioned Mahomes because that Mahomes Hollywood stack is pretty popular. So that's cover. And you can get Lamar to come back. You're not always going to have Lamar come back, but I don't really care if I have Mahomes with that or Andrews without Lamar. Like that's fine with me. But I'm getting a lot of Lamar by doing this, and I'm getting a lot of that stack. I'm at 8% Lamar overall, but in Best Ball Mania, I'm at 16%. So like I've just been really kind of hammering that, trying to get that stack, and it's been a priority for me recently with the way this current ADP sets up. This potential stack might kind of break. Like they both could kind of get pulled into the fourth. They both could get pulled into the fifth. The potential to get both, and the potential to get both in a way that, like, it's not a problem if it gets blown up. Like if I have Andrews and I don't get Lamar, someone has unstacked Lamar in the room, and I've got Andrews. If Lamar has a huge season, cool. That's gonna be really good for a guy who is gonna fill that onesie position for me. So it's a feature of drafts right now that I really do think we should attack, to the point that I am taking Andrews over McBride to try to get more of that stack. And it's somewhat of an underdog related thing. On DraftKings, we still have McBride ahead of Andrews, in part because of the scoring, in part because it's not, it's clean of a setup as it is on that. Any thoughts on that one?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Just when you take Mark Andrews, you're disincentivizing the room from taking Lamar Jackson and more likely to get him yourself. And if someone else takes Lamar, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have Mark Andrews on his own.
All right. Okay.
The last of the elite QBs I want to touch on is just the Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I mean, both of those guys I think are like pretty mispriced. I think you want to have a lot of them right now. We did move Josh Allen down just a little bit. It's less about like, we think Josh Allen's the worst pick, and more about that when you take Josh Allen just a pick or two later, you're increasing the probability of being able to get Dalton Kincaid with him coming back in the fifth substantially. And so it's more a game theory thing of, hey, why don't you try taking Josh Allen a little later than we were taking him? Because right now, like if you draft up the ranks and you're looking at, prior to this update, you're just looking at the correlation between Garrett Wilson and Josh Allen. Garrett Wilson was like a Josh Allen magnet, where he's like, week 17 correlation here between Garrett Wilson and Josh Allen. And then it's really hard to get Dalton Kincaid to come all the way back at the end there. And now you're getting Keon Coleman to fall to you a little bit more there on that side of the board. But still, I really like taking Josh Allen closer to the middle of the board. And then with Jalen Hurts, I just found myself prioritizing taking Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown more than I even normally would, just because I want to be able to stack Jalen Hurts with one of his top two pass catchers, because this price is, in my opinion, pretty egregious. Like it takes a lot for me to be overweight an elite quarterback, because they historically they'd had, last year at least, they had really high prices. I thought it was pretty hard for them to be a very good pick at. But this year, I think that we've kind of pendulum swung too far the other way. So I would like to be overweight on all of Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, and Lamar. And so I think in order to do that for Hurts, you either got to be comfortable taking him naked more often when he falls to the end of the fourth, or just kind of preemptively set that up by getting yourself a little bit overweight on Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and I've been taking more A.J. Brown to set up that early fourth stack, because you just know Hurts is going to be there. I haven't done it as much with Devonta, but I like the idea to really take advantage of those Hurts falls. And you do see the Hurts fall. I've tended to use the Hurts fall more to get the Lamar Andrews stack. So, Zach and I, when we're in rooms together, it's nice if we're on the front half of the board, because I'll just grab Andrews, you grab Hurts, then I'll grab Lamar. But I kind of want to be the one grabbing Hurts, I think, a little bit more. So sorry to break our our alliance there, but
we had a real Jack Sprat thing going on there.
I feel like that's a good feature of sort of how we do the rankings, though. If we truly don't have strong preferences and we're like, these are the types of teams you want to build and we like these players, we will just flip throughout the summer. Like, hey, let's try and shake up exposures to all players we want. But Pat, I've been doing the exact same thing. Hurts is falling past ADP, and I'm like, that's cover for me to get my 22% Lamar. Hurts is also a smash pick.
He's a smash.
I mean, I did the exact same, and I still, up until today, have done that exact same thing as you. And the rankings, we literally draft off them. So it's like useful for us to be like, okay, like how can we influence our own drafts, let alone like obviously the people who
Right.
are doing this with them, but like we use them too. And it's good to, remember that.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Hurts is going to be a little bit more of a priority for me with the Devonta stack as well. And I think these stacks in general are one of the, obviously every part of the year is going to have its features, and certain stacks are going to be more available. But I think that these elite quarterbacks in general move up as wide receiver prices come down. We do expect the wide receiver prices will come down eventually. They haven't really so far, but they probably will, as more casuals come in. And if the quarterbacks come up, maybe it's the case that Andrews goes in the 5th, and you can always get him in the early 5th, and you take Lamar in the late 4th or whatever, and it's not a big deal. But some of this stuff is going to get disrupted and broken up, and it might just be like really hard to pair Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts together, unless you do it at the 2-3 turn. So it's a lot nicer if you can do it with a 3rd-round pick sandwiched in between them. So yeah, or I guess Devontae's the 3rd-round pick, and you get a 2nd-round pick. That's pretty sweet. Anyway, so I think identifying the stacks that and then the Hurts one's probably the best example of like this Devontae Smith Hurts stack might be like truly a worse version of it that you're doing later if you don't take advantage of it now. But we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Anything to shout out here before we get out of here? I'll shout out RotoWorld. Just you guys are in the content minds right now, the blurb minds.
I gotta be honest, I was on earlier today. It was fun. It was more fun than I thought. Nice. I didn't realize how, like I said, we're all thirsty for news. All you sick best ball freaks are thirsty for news. I was apparently a little thirsty for writing.
Oh, you were thirsty.
So, yeah, I started writing up the blurbs. I was like, this is a little more fun than I remember, given how boring the middle of the summer is. I honestly was like, oh, news, thank God. Even though it's it's still coach quotes and stuff, but now it's a little bit of usage. It's I miss being thick of it at least a little bit. I won't be singing this tune in 3 weeks, but the first week is pretty fun, to be honest. So yeah, check out RotoWorld. Check out the RotoWorld Football Show. Pat's been on it 2 or 3 times this summer if you want to find those episodes. And I had an article come out about the 1st-round picks because, especially Sack and I and Pat, we've all talked in the Discord about where's the good 1st-round fade this year. I think it's not as clean as it was in previous years when we had an Eckler type. But I had an article talking about that come out, so you can check that out as well.
Nice. I had an article last week on some of the things in drafts that I'm afraid to lose. We haven't lost those things yet. The APs haven't shaken up too much, so check that out. I'm also working on an article on these running backs in that sweet spot, in round 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It kind of goes on and on, kind of digging into those profiles. So that'll be out relatively soon. Still writing it, but I'd also mention the Sidekick, legendaryupside.com/sidekick, our best ball dynamic rankings tool. Now works on ADP as well as the leg up default ranks. So we've been waiting to check that out. I would say that it's a good time to do so. Plus, we are pretty close to having the ability to upload custom ranks to the Sidekick, as well as DraftKings functionality. So those are still, a few weeks away, but things we're actively working on, hoping to get launched soon. So some fun stuff there. I'd also, Daniel and I are going to talk about maybe writing another article in the next week or so. So we might have some good stuff from Daniel coming out. If you have not checked out his Avalanche article, highly recommend that. Zach, anything I'm missing on leg up?
A few weeks might have been a little aggressive on your time estimate. I would certainly hope that we have custom ranks at DraftKings a little quicker than a few weeks from now. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled.
We try to beat expectations.
Yeah, you're trying to. I get it. You're under promise, over deliver. But
that is the best way to go.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have something for you guys before too long here on those fronts.
All right. See you guys later. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be back soon.